and welcome to That Squirrel Speaks. Today is Friday, September 13th. I am Amy Beth, also known as the Fat Squirrel on Ravelry and the Fat SQRRL on Instagram. My washing machine just decided to make a funny noise. This is me being like, do I stop to turn it off? Maybe it'll just be for a moment. Thanks for coming over in the midst of laundry, apparently. Okay, so visual things that might make you crazy. So I'll just let you know right away what's happening. Game shelf, very disorganized, very haphazard. Not demure, not cutesy. There's just like a little fold-out table back there with like just a piece of yardage on it. Those are my potatoes that I dug. And there's like a little crate underneath of it. Potatoes. Did we talk last time about my tiny fingerling potatoes that are just ridiculous? I think I did, but in case I didn't. Oh, further visual things that you might be questioning. It is going to be 90 degrees or something like it today. But in this house, we are wearing long sleeve sweaters and drinking chai. I mean, it's not sweaters. That's a bridge too far. Long sleeve t-shirts. We're being swaddled in a nice little bamboo cotton with sleeves. We're drinking chai. We're drinking like half chai, half regular because I'm a coffee drinker. Half chai, half Irish breakfast. Somebody out there is going to be like, sac relish. Totally true. But like sometimes you gotta amp up the like stodginess of your beverage when you're a coffee drinker because like otherwise it just feels like you're drinking hot water. Facts. So welcome over. Have some chai, there's other assorted fall teas available for your consumption. I recommend Autumn Black by Plum Street. I also still love sweet potato something or other from David's Tea. Those are just options. There are many. There's a hard cider. There's a fresh cider. I haven't done my appling yet because we had a beautiful break in the weather, but it was a little early for appling, and so now we're back into like, yeah, that's right. It's September in central United States, which means it could be 90 degrees any minute, which it is. Excuse me. What were we doing? Oh, potatoes. Welcome to my podcast. I'm a little neurospicy. So I don't know if we talked last time about like my amazing fingerling potato harvest, but just in case we didn't, or just in case maybe you didn't watch every episode because you're a human being with things going on. Do you see those? What are the, what? Yeah, those are the fingerling potatoes. Now, granted, I did have like 300 of them. But, so those were in grow bags, and that's the first time, I felt like I had done potatoes in grow bags one year, like just a few, but maybe I didn't. You know, I should probably keep track of these things, like not just this way, because Lord knows I'm not going to rewatch myself to try to figure that out. But, you know, I should probably like write down the gardening things. Like that's what a normal human being would do. Anyway, so my fingerling potatoes in grow bags were a solid fail. The plants looked fine. They seemed like they died a little bit early. But, you know, who knows? I did grow some purple Vikings in the grow bags, and they did much better. They were actually like, in fact, these that you see back there, those purple Viking potatoes, those got to be reasonable size, but I still only got like 3 from a plant. So I don't know what's going on. It could have been just that they're in like black felt bags, so maybe they needed to have like a heat shield around them, or maybe I just didn't have good luck with them. But I did harvest the rest of my potatoes, which were a very mixed bag. My purple Vikings did really well. So same dirt. They were in 3 grow boxes, 2 right next, grow boxes, raised beds. So 2 that are right next to each other, and then 1 that was like around the corner. The purple Vikings were right next to, I think, the German butterballs, but the German butterballs did not do well. I also planted, not Kennebecs, but another variety, not Katahdins, because they were out. But I planted another, like, similar to the German butterball in, like, appearance. And neither of those did well. My, like, light, like, average or potatoes were really pretty lame. Almost all of them were, like, golf ball size. And I had a lot of them. But I don't know if it just was, like, a heat thing. Like, it got hot and the plants, because that is a thing that potatoes don't love heat. So it may have just gotten a little too hot for them. And because they are in raised beds, they have, you know, their temperatures do affect raised beds differently than they do in-ground potatoes. So it could have been that, but the purple Vikings did fine. And in fact, I thought, well, maybe I planted these too tightly together, because I do remember having more potatoes than more seed potato than I really needed for the space. But the purple Vikings were actually planted more densely than the other ones. But they also had a bigger, like, tuber that I put into the ground. Like, so the part of the seed potato was bigger. Whatever. I don't know what happened, is what I'm telling you. Gardening is like that for people who are novices. But the purple Vikings did okay. And I got some of the other potatoes were, like, of a relatively decent size, but majority of them were, like, golf ball size. So I did pull out 30 pounds, not counting those amazing fingerling potatoes. I did harvest 30 pounds of potatoes from 10 pounds of seed potato. Again, not counting the fingerlings. So that's a 3-to-1 ratio, which is really bad. That's pretty abysmal. But I am comforting myself. I'm assuaging the guilt over the amount of money I spent on seed potato by telling myself that those marble-sized potatoes are the ones that I do pay like $3.50 a pound for in the grocery store. And they are really good. Like, we've had them several times. And they are very good. They're perfect for doing, like, salt potatoes with, which is something that's introduced to me by Knit Spin Farm, who does amazing self-strapping yarn and bats. I'm like, does she still do bats? Yes, she does. So that was introduced to me by Knit Spin Farm, which is where you put, like, an obscene amount of water in the salt. You put an obscene amount of water. You put an obscene amount of salt in the water and then boil your potatoes in it. And originated from miners, but I'm not sure what they were mining. Were they mining brine? I mean, that would make sense, but I don't remember there being brine. Whatever. They would use, like, a brine water and just boil the potatoes in it, like, as they were doing their work. And then that would be, like, I think they're called Syracuse salt potatoes in many places. So anyway, so they're like amazing for that. And again, you know, they are the very fancy, expensive potatoes that I normally do buy. So I'm pretending like that I still got an okay return. And they do require so little effort. Like, they're not something like where you have to pick them constantly or, like, fight them in any way. Like, you really do just plant them and then just be like, da-da. So for the amount of work, and then again, for the amount of money I spent on seed potatoes, I still think I did a little okay. We're going to pretend I did okay. But anyway, so they're back there because they're, like, curing. They should not be curing at room temperature. They should really be in the basement. But I'm just going to be honest with you. My husband very kindly set up the table and put the potatoes out because I went to Wisconsin where they should have been curing. He very kindly put them out, and so I didn't have the heart to be like, no, that's wrong. And then also the energy to be like, no, that's wrong, and now I need to move them all downstairs. Would it be that much work? No. More than I want to do. So yeah, they're just like, you know, they're curing. I did have the heart to be like, okay, they do have to have a cloth over them because they cannot be in direct sunlight in the house. But anyway, anywho, that's what's going on in case you're watching and just being like, what's happening? And hopefully there's not something else that you're very confused about. I'm trying to look, but I don't have my glasses on, so I think we're okay. Welcome to this thing. It's definitely about crafts. Yeah. Okay. So, shameless self-promotion. I have a shop update September 15th, 9 p.m. Eastern. fatsquirrelfibers.com. February. This is not February. September 15th. Yeah. 9 p.m. Eastern. fatsquirrelfibers.com. I know I said it twice, but it's how we pay the bills. So this is gonna be actually I think it's like 90% Apple update because hi, 'tis the season. So we have in sock bags, right? So this is a linen cotton canvas from Cotton and Steel, if you're familiar with that base. So it is not interfaced. It is lined with an unbleached cotton, like a light canvas. And so it's not interfaced, so it's not, it is covered in wool. Not covered, but it does have some wool upon it. But it does stand up by itself still, and it has a good hand. And I love this cotton canvas from Cotton and Steel, this cotton linen canvas so much. I hate to interface it because it just has such a delicious hand on its own. But it just has like, can you hear it? Can you hear how nice it feels? Anyway, so in these beautiful green apples, so sock size. And then I'm usually opposed, there's so much wool. I'm usually opposed to the gnomes with no eyes. I'm gonna be honest with you. We've discussed it before. But these are pretty cute and they have mushrooms and it's a really fun color palette. So I have these guys also in a sock size. This is an Essex linen and it is lightly interfaced, but again, it has that, you know, when you sew bags for a living, these are the things that are really important to you. I know there are many people in the world who buy my bags who would never notice like what the actual like specific texture is, but it's really important to me as a person who works on these all the time and who really wants to give you like a very good product. So yeah, so these guys are both going to be in sock. And then to further our apple theme, when I ordered this fabric, I was like, is this too subtle? Like, not that there's anything such as too subtle, but I was like, I'm not sure. Sometimes I purchase things because I think they're the best thing ever. And sometimes I purchase them because I'm like, that's a good counter to what else I have available. And so I wasn't sure about this one. I love it. I mean, I am a sucker for navy and ochre, which is what this one has going on, but I really like it. So it's just this like beautiful little apple branch, just sweet and very demure. I'm sorry. But like, right. So this is in my cotton denim and that's in a bale in a large wedge size, which again is great for shawls and 2 to 3 skein projects. And then, okay, our only non-apple. Well, no, that's not true. The gnomes were non-apples. Okay, so also in a large wedge, I had this little guy, which I only had a small amount of, and so he did not go in the regular Halloween update because I was just like kind of overwhelmed. But then I came across him and I was like, oh my gosh, he's so charming. Isn't he so charming? Like, why didn't I get more of this? But anyway, so there will be a few of him. This is the only one that there's a limited quantity of. But like he is, he's also the Essex linen and he is also interfaced, but just like so dreamy. And then in my sweater size, which is a great for like your bigger shawls, like your 4 or 5 Joji Locatelli shawls. Excuse me. I have this super great, autumnal patchworky vibe. We've got mushrooms, we've got teapots, we've got sleeping foxes, we have acorns, we have socks, we have apples just in case. So we have all the autumnal goodness. And then because this is a cream background, and I know a lot of people are sort of like, oh, I'm gonna get that scrubby. She has a brushed denim in this like apple cider brown, sort of like saddle tobacco brown color. So, and then also with the same denim bottom, we have this just celebration. So this is my Aran sweater size. This is my largest project size. And this is great for sweaters, for everybody blanket projects, for shoving all of your other projects in and then using as a throw pillow, whatever. And so we have cider, and we have pies, and we have toast with apple butter. And we have all of the sweet things. We have apple jam. Apples, a guide. So just so stinking sweet. And then we have one more, and she's not an apple, but I think you'll forgive me because look at her. So this is also in my Aran sweater size. This is an interfaced decorator weight cotton, but just didn't have enough body for me. But like, this is a very large repeat on the print, so your bag will vary. If you like must have a stripy cat, or you must have a white cat, or you must have, there's a little yellow cat on some of them, then please do, if you must have this, this reverse sploot and splooter, just let me know, and I will try to accommodate you. But how great is she? She's so good. So those are all my fall bags. Those again will be September 15th, 9 p.m. Eastern, fatsquirrelfibers.com. Yeah. Ding. Okay, so what should we do? We should do, okay, let's have a little chitty chat. You can skip ahead if you're not interested in chitty chat. But I did just want to say I went to the Wisconsin Sheep and Wool Festival. I think it's in Jefferson, Wisconsin. It's just east of Madison. Yeah, just east of Madison. And I had the most lovely time. So for everybody who came up and said hello or introduced themselves or waved demurely from the sidelines, I just want to say a big thank you. It was really a treat to get to meet some of you and to get to see some of you that I haven't seen for a long time. I had several folks that I have not seen since Paula Emmons-Feasley, who hosted the Knitting Pipeline retreats and the Knitting Pipeline podcast. I hadn't seen some of you since I saw you at her retreat, or one of her retreats. And so that was really delightful, not only just to see you, but just to be reminded of her and like what a positive force she was in our community. And just in general, thank you so much to the community builders within us. Like, unfortunately, that is not something that I know how to do or think is a potential, like is a positive trait that I have. And so I really appreciate it so much in other people. Thank you so much to people who host retreats or who host knit nights or who host spinning events or who host your local folks that just come over for coffee or you meet them at the pub. Thank you so much to all those community makers out there amongst us. And of course, the community makers in our larger environment as well. But so it was just like good vibes, be vibing the whole weekend. There's some folks there in Madison who set up pop-up like the vendor tents that are just like the top for shade and for rain protection. So they transport those. They get chairs together, like camp chairs and things like that. And they just set that all up outside of the vendor barns for people to just come and visit and sit and knit, which is what the beautiful things about fiber events are, is all the folks. I mean, we all enjoy shopping, but like, that's the reason that I want to go there and be there all day, right? Like, if I'm just going to shop, I can go through everything in a couple of hours. But what I really want to do is go and visit and like see what you bought and see what you're excited about and see what you've crocheted or what you've knit or what you've sewn. So that's that's the most exciting part for me at this point in my journey through the crafty world. But there were also lots of great sheepy events. I was telling folks, because people were like, oh, because it's the first time I have been. I was telling lots of folks, for some reason, I thought it was like on the other side of Wisconsin. So I thought it was really far for me. And it's still far. It's 5 hours of Illinois driving, which is not the most exciting driving available. I've driven in lots of places. People always are like, oh, drive through Pennsylvania. Oh, I'll take it. Driving 5 hours in Illinois. But so it wasn't terribly far for me, and it's not a huge festival by any stretch of the imagination in terms of like the number of vendors. It's probably, for my Indiana people, it definitely has more than like the Greencastle, which was used to be called the Fiber Event and is now the Greencastle Wool Show, I want to say. It has more vendors than they do, but not like exponentially more. It's like 2 of your like standard fairground barns full of vendors, but that's kind of like a perfect amount because it's enough for you to get a lot of variety, you know, for whatever you're looking for. If you're looking for a fleece, or if you're looking for spinning fiber, or if you're looking for yarn, or if you're looking for like mill yarn, or you're looking for like small mill yarn, like, so it's got like accessories, tools, all that stuff. So there's like enough vendors that you get a lot of variety, but not so many that you just sort of like glaze over. It's certainly still a situation where like you get back and you do show and tell with what you purchased and you're like, I did not see that happening. Like, where were you in a different barn than I was? Like, where? So that still happens, but not for so much, like not as much as it does like at a Maryland sheep and wool or a New York sheep and wool, which are just like, brr, like for somebody who like me, who is like who is relatively sensitive to stimulus, like those can be pretty challenging. But the perfect thing is, even though it doesn't have like a like ridiculous amount of stuff, again, it kind of had the perfect amount of stuff, but it had more sheepy events than any of my Indiana shows. Now, there is now a Southern Indiana there's a Southern Indiana wool show, and I've not been to that one yet. But the Wisconsin Sheep and Wool definitely had more sheep events than the festivals that are closer to me have had. And I really love the sheep events. In fact, I probably could have just like camped out at all of those and been very content, but I also wanted to visit everybody. So I kind of had a balance, luckily. But the sheep shearers were really great. They were very fun. And it was a father-son team. The father sort of narrated and the son did the shearing. But then also they had like sheepdog trials, which I did not see much of. I did see a little bit, but did not see a ton of. And then they had a show, like, so people were showing their sheep, but it wasn't like, okay, there's 8 Cheviots next to each other and we're going to pick the best one. It's something called card grading or something. Anyway, they have like different grades, like there's like blue, yellow, green, red, blue, green, yellow, red, something like that. And basically what they're doing is they're judging a sheep individually and they're judging that sheep against its standard. So there's like looking at the sheep and saying, oh, this one, like she has great lock formation on the front of her coat, but as it goes to the back of her coat, that lock formation breaks down. That's not ideal. But the way she stands, she's evenly distributing her weight against like through her hips and into the ground versus like she's not like cattywampus in any way. She's got good condition on her, so she looks like she'll be able to lamb and do this. Or like, oh, this sheep has, I guess there's two different types of like, well, there's three different types of jaw formation. One of them is called parrot, or the front, like it's an overbite, and then monkey mouth, which is the underbite, and then there's one that's like a crossbite. But so they were talking about like that and how those genetics can, apparently the parrot thing is terrible and like it just keeps cropping up over and over again. So if you have a sheep with that, like, sorry, like use her for wool, but she's not going to be your breeding stock. Or like the monkey mouth. So the underbite, the underbite, like that pretty much can, like if you breed them to an animal that doesn't have that issue, it often will go away and it doesn't seem to crop up later and later. Anyway, so they had like 3 judges judging each sheep, and they were like conversing and talking, and then they would go back and forth, and they would go and they would prod the sheep, and the sheep were like brought into the ring not by their shepherds but by like just a couple of teenagers. I'm sure they were like 4-H kids, but you know what I mean, like they weren't the shepherds of the flock, so that so I'm assuming so that the judging will be less biased, like, right, like we're not like, oh well, Jeannie has really great Corriedales and like so we're gonna just automatically think this is better. But so they would like converse, and they would like move the sheep a little bit, and then they would talk, and then they would like sort of like, usually one of them would like take the mic and be like, okay, here's what the consensus was. But sometimes there would be like dissenting opinions about like, again, like sometimes they would have that bite issue, and they would be like, this guy thinks it's fine, and this guy's like, no. And so it was really fun, and I'm not gonna lie. So even more fun is that for me, as not a person who owns a sheep and so has no skin in the game, is that there were 2 male judges and a female judge. And one of the male judges, I was like, gosh, that guy just looks like he's going to be English. Like, I was like, that's so silly. Like, we're in Wisconsin. Like, why would that be? And so the other guy was talking about the breed, and I just kept looking at him and being like, that guy looks like he could be at the, like, oh, what's the Scottish show? Anyway, any one of the, like, British agricultural shows that I watch, like on This Farming Life or whatever. And I was just like, gosh, that guy just looks like he just came right out of there. And then he took the mic, and for like a hot second, I was like, oh my God, he's English! And I probably screamed that to Emily, who was sitting next to me. Poor thing. She's like, I'm not taking you anywhere ever again. But I was so excited. And then he talked a little bit more, and I was like, oh wait, I think he's like Australian or maybe Tasmanian. I know that's very specific. I don't understand the Tasmanian accent, but there was like a portion of the show that I saw later on the schedule that was something about like Corriedales in Tasmania or something, and I was like, oh well, maybe he's Tasmanian. But anyway, I was very excited. Isn't that weird? You're like, how do you look? It was something, he was wearing like a navy blue sweater, and he kind of was like a little bit, he was an older gentleman, and he was, I don't know, what is it? Is it the set of his head? Like, what makes me think that? Because he just looks like an older white dude. Like, why was I like, he's definitely not of this place? Anyway, I put too much sweetener in my tea. It's a little too sweet. But anyway, it was delightful. And I could have, again, I really could have watched it all day. And then the woman in front of me, was saying that she has like 3 sheep, and so she was there to like see the card grading and see how it goes and like learn better like what she needs to do for her flock. And it was just, I just love sheep people, right? They're not going to be like, at least in the US, they're definitely not going to be like capitalist, like greed people, because there's not money in it. Not that I want people to be like falling on their swords and not be financially secure. That's not what I mean at all. But I just mean it kind of selects for people who are not like having $400 handbags, I guess. You do you. But I'm just saying. So so it was just really delightful. And then again, it was just so nice to visit with people. And I was like so flattered because some folks asked me if I wanted to, if I was going to go, that I could stay with them at their like Airbnb, their Verbo. And so like I got to stay with a bunch of people and they were all delightful. So yeah, it's like somebody else picked, like, and made reservations for, I didn't have to figure any of that out. Like we had like activities were planned for us. We had like a soda, like a Wisconsin soda tasting and a Wisconsin cider tasting. The Wisconsin soda tasting told me that I do not drink like leaded soda. Like I grew up on diet soda and I know, like, don't tell me it's good, don't tell me it's bad. It just is. And so I know that a lot of people read diet sodas as very sweet, which I totally understand. But there's like it's a different kind of sweet, right? Because it's artificial sweetener. It's a different kind of sweet. And so I'm not used to drinking like syrupy sodas. And it was a little bit like, oh, I need to lie down. Whew. I needed like a nap and there were like little savories served to kind of help with that. But it's like, I need like a protein bomb and a nap. But and we got to eat at a supper club. I've never been to a supper club. Apparently this is like a very Wisconsin thing. So that was enjoyable. And I got to have walleye. When I was a little girl, my grandparents would go to Lake Erie, an island on Lake Erie, Middle Bass Island. We'd stay at Jim Bretz's cottages. And by the way, if you know what happened to Jim Bretz's cottages, please let me know. I know that's like a super specific ask, but sometimes I'm like, yeah, I've got like a astrophysicist who knows the beef with so-and-so and so-and-so, and they come and tell me. So I know that's really specific, but it's tendrils, man. It's like the mycelium network of knitters. If you know what happened to those cottages, I would love to know. I've like done the Google Earth scan. I've done like all the Verbo listings. Anyway, my grandparents always fished for walleye. Like we would sometimes get like smallmouth bass or, what are those, white bass, perch, not so much. But anyway, so it was just like such a treat to get to have walleye. It was like, oh, that was delightful. I had an old fashioned, which is apparently a thing you have to have. I've never heard they do old fashions with sherry. Is that right? Whatever. They're weird up there, but I love them. I'm enjoying the Wisconsin folks. I was like, I'm ready to move. Never been to Madison. It's a beautiful little city on a lake. Like, somehow I've never seen that. Yes, I've seen big cities on like the Great Lakes, but you don't see like a lot of cities on lakes. At least not where I'm from. Rivers? Yes. Great Lakes? Yes. Lakes? Not so much. They've got a good thing going there. It's really pretty. It's lovely. It's very exciting. So sorry, that's a lot of me rambling, but I just had the best time and it was delightful. So if you are in Indiana, we have some things that are coming up that I'm probably not going to, but just like FYI, there's like the Southern Indiana Fiber Festival. I think it's sort of like Seymour / Louisville, like above Louisville. And then we also have the Wool Gathering, which is in Yellow Springs at Young's Dairy Farm. Very enjoyable show. There's lots of other ones too, but just like while I'm talking. Okay, let's talk about my crafting stuff. Yeah. So one crafting thing that I did, I wanted to show you is I made these little guys for the folks that invited me to stay with them because they were so generous in doing so. And I just think they turned out so cute. Right? So these are just little notions pouches, or some people use them for like, I know that Sarah, another crafty girl, has said that she has used them for like her flosses while she's cross stitching. If that's something you're interested in, have me having the shop, just let me know. I don't know. Do I have enough like stitchery people that are like, but anyway, how cute are these with these cute little ghosts? The vinyl is sparkly, which is not usually my thing, but then there were lots of sparkles that happened over the weekend, so it seemed like it made sense. And then the back is this super cute little ghosties and houses. And like, did this binding not turn out so cute? So cute, this binding. So anyway, so cute. This fabric is from Hawthorne, and it's their print to order range. So I used the denim for the ghosties and the ghosties. Excuse me. And then they do like a lightweight twill, which I did for the binding, which was maybe not the easiest choice, but it did turn out really cute. Again, I have trouble with doing like quilter's cotton binding on denim because I'm like, the texture's too different. Again, something only I am worried about, but I think they turned out super cute. So yeah, so there's those. By the way, if you're ever wanting to do binding, totally pick a check or a stripe and then do your binding like, if it's just a stripe, do it like counter to that vertical. It makes the cutest bindings, right? And then I've been having the quilting bug and I showed you that fabric for a dress that I want to make, but I haven't actually done those because I've been working on bags and working on little goodies and just doing all the crafting. But I definitely have like some quilty desire that's building in me that I need to exercise soon. Okay, so in cross stitch, I am still working on my little pin cushion, my little haunted house pillow cushion, pin cushion, but it doesn't look that different, so I'll show it to you next time. And then last time we talked, I was mentioning that I was starting the Village of Hawk Run Hollow, which is a pattern by Carriage House Samplings. And I was doing much wailing and gnashing of teeth over it. I had started it on, so recommended, or like the photograph, is 40 count linen and NPI silks. But it has a DMC conversion, so it has the option to do the DMCs. And I had not stitched on 40 count, so I had 36 count. And I was just not so excited about how it was looking. So here it is. Here is the 36 count with DMCs. Still lovely, but a little bit more muted than I was imagining. It doesn't mean that this is not lovely, because it is, but it was just a little bit more washed out than I had in my brain. So I was going back and forth and hemming and hawing. And so, oh, thank you for listening. And so what I decided to do was just to put this on hold and try to see what it would look like if I stitched it on 40 count, which is correct. Oh, this is a suggested. See if I even could stitch on 40 count. And then to stitch with the originally I was going to stitch on the 40 count with the DMCs. I tried that. The cotton threads, it's not terrible, but they sort of get a little bit fuzzy, especially in that 40 count, because there's more abrasion on the thread. And it's not bad at all, but it's just enough that I was kind of frustrated with those little fuzzies. And there's things you can do. You can use like conditioner. You can use shorter threads. You can use a bigger needle to like sort of open out the spaces a little bit between the threads so that there's less abrasion on the cotton thread. But I decided ultimately what I would do after I tried on the 40 count with the DMCs, I would try it on with the silks. So what I did is, part of the reason I was hesitant to buy the silks for this project is that they're pretty pricey because there's a lot of silks. There's twice this many colors. Like, it's crazy. And so I thought, okay, maybe if I just purchase enough silks to do this one square, which was basically like a third of them, it will make me feel like it's not such a price point to bite off. And then I can just see how I feel. And I do really like them better with the silks. So here it is. Same, this is Zweigert. This one was 36. This one's 40. They're both platinum. So it's the same color and the same manufacturer. It's just a smaller, a tighter count. These are my samples up here, so those will just be ripped out by the end. And I totally like the DMC. This is the DMC here because I was just practicing with it. And I really like the way it looks. I just didn't like stitching with it as much because, again, those fuzzies kind of got on my nerves. And the silks are nice. They don't do the fuzzy thing, and they just glide through a little bit easier. So yeah, I guess I'm doing it this way now. And I can always decide like, oh no, it's not that important to me. Sorry, my needle came out and I was just trying to put it back in. I can always decide later like, oh, it's not really that important to me. I'll mix it up and just use the silks and the DMC. But yeah, so is it different to anybody but me? Maybe not, but I'm the one working on it. So there they are next to each other. And it is different, right? Like you can see that that is, I'm trying to get light on both of them. Like that is considerably richer in color, the silks versus the DMCs. And again, the smaller count, because that's a huge factor too. It means there's less of the cloth showing through. So if you wanted to use the DMCs, you could always use 2 strands on the 36 or something like that. I don't like to do 2 strands on 36 because I don't hate it, but it just gets a little snug. It's a little, when you have a dense stitching, it kind of like, it just gets a little snug. Let's just leave it at that. The nice thing about the 42 is that you can actually just get like the fat quarter and not have to get a full half yard, which is a little bit of a money saver, not huge, but yeah, I'm actually pretty pleased with it. And I'm doing fine with the 40 count. I mean, it's definitely a little bit smaller. And there's been times where I was counting and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to get out a magnifying glass to double check. But with my super bright light, again, it's not a huge difference in the, again, it's 20 stitches to the inch versus 18 stitches to the inch. It's not huge, but it is significant. But it seems like it's fine so far. And I just feel like the daintiest Victorian lady as I'm doing my teensy tiny little stitches. It's quite enjoyable. I don't know why. I don't want to be a Victorian lady at any other time. And I'm definitely a Victorian lady in my air-conditioned house, like not wearing my bra. But whatever. It's very enjoyable. So these are the NPI silks for just that first upper right hand square, which is the one I'm doing right now, which is like a little brick house. Yeah, which is about 1/3 of the overall silks that are for the project. But again, like there's a whole range of these Hawk Run hollows that I would really kind of like to do, and so you could use those. There's only so many NPI silks that are available, so there's going to be some overlap. So then in spinning, I will show you the fiber I purchased at Wisconsin Sheep and Wool because it is bananas. And I just feel like we need to share how bananas it is. So this is spinning fiber from Honey Gold Acres. This is the colorway Springfield, and it's 70% merino, 30% stellina. And I really loved this color, but she didn't have, so one of them has silver stellina and one of them has white stellina, but I figure I'll just do a ply of each and it really won't matter at all that way. So Emily, who is Knitwit, Knit, Knitwitte, the number 8, Knitwit 8, she had fiber from them that she had spun and was working on a sweater, which I can't remember the name of, but whatever. It was amazing. Like she had a very like winey purple with some grays colorway, and it was gorgeous. There was much oohing and awing. There was much holding it to the light. It was much experimenting with it in other lights. It was ridiculous and lovely. So it was sort of like the ooh of the weekend. So I really resisted. I was like, I don't need sparkly fiber. I'm not a huge sparkle person, but I was peer pressured and I did it. And I don't really have any regrets at all. Right. So it's fun because even though this one is called a white stellina, it really reads more as coppery. Anyway, either way, it's pretty darn fun. And you would think with there being that much stellina that it might feel kind of like crunchy, and it didn't. Now that's probably testament to how talented of a spinner than Emily is, but I'm going to do my best and see what happens. But I also have some fiber to some yarn I show you. Yeah. Words. Really, I came home and I don't think I said more than like 12 words for like a good 3 days. It's like I'm sick of hearing myself talk. So I have finished spinning. That's what I was trying to say. I finished spinning. So this has been on the spinning wheel. I made a mistake. Like, I moved my Hanson e-spinner up into my bedroom because, like, A, space, and B, I was like, I'm having this, I've had this thing where I like wake up at like 4 o'clock in the morning, and you know what that is, right? You wake up at 3:30 or 4, and sometimes you're able to go back to sleep. Sometimes with the aid of some sort of CBD gummy. But sometimes you're just awake now, and I'm like my mamaw, and I'm just gonna like be awake. But I don't want to like wake up everything that's in the house. So I brought my spinner up there thinking like, okay, well that'll be perfect for like those times that I wake up and I need something to do. But then it just never got done because I would wake up at like 3:30 in the morning to just read or whatever. Anyway, you don't need to know that, but you're visiting. So I finally finished. This is a pound of fiber. 1 ply is some Cormo roving, and it is roving, not combed top. Some Cormo roving that I purchased at the Greencastle Wool Show. And then the other ply is, or excuse me, the other 8 ounces is Hip Strings Plague Bear, but I'm not sure what the base is, that I purchased at SSK of 2023. And I have a total 558, 500. I have a little over, I have about 1,100 yards out of a pound. And so, yeah, I'm really not in love with it. It's nothing to do with the fiber. I tried to do the class I took at SSK 23 with Jillian Marino, who's the best teacher. She's a great teacher. Is where you like combine 2 tops while you're spinning. But instead of like being a reasonable person and combining 2 tops like I was shown how to do, I decided, yes, I could definitely combine a comb top and a roving. And it was more challenging. It was much more challenging. And I think that because of that, the effect is not quite as good. But it might also just be because it was on the wheel for so long that now it needs to go and hibernate somewhere, and then I will like it when I go back to it. But yeah, it is really lovely colors. Just like naturals. And again, the top from Hip Strings is dyed, but it was dyed in like smoky blacks and beautiful browns. So yeah, there's that. And more than anything, I'm just really happy that she's done. If my friend had spun this, I'd be like, oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. Holy Hannah, you did such a great job. This yarn is gorgeous. Treat yourself like a friend. Treat yourself like a friend. Look at this beautiful yarn I spun. Treat yourself like a friend. Okay, so then I also finished, this is from Gritty Knits. This is Superwash Shaniko. Right? One of your beautiful faces is from Oregon, and like, I was like, yes, rhymes. Shan rhymes with Stan. Like as in it's. Shaniko. I have such a disconnect in part of my brain that I don't understand. But anyway, really what Shaniko is it's sort of like a branded merino. It's like it's a merino rambouillet, which again are very close related. And it's a it's a sheep that's very well suited to Western environments. but it seems like more of like it's a branding effort to like specify like, oh no, these are merino rambouillets from this area. And so this was a superwash one, and it was very enjoyable to spin. I also don't usually like superwash merino, or I haven't liked it in the past. And I did like this. It could have been just that additional rambouillet that helped give it a little bit more grab, because I tend to find that superwash merino or merino in general is just a little too slippery for me. But this was quite enjoyable to knit, and also probably helped that I was knitting it in a fluffier, like a thicker yarn. But anyway, it's super cute, right? Oh, so sorry, this is Ochre Rainbow. So that's her colorway, Ochre Rainbow. And this is about 215 yards from a 4-ounce bump. It's just cute and fun. It's really nice to just do something outside your normal color range, just to sort of give yourself a little breather. But I also finished, I showed you last time, I think, the fiber. This is also from Hip Strings. This is also Superwash Shaniko. And this is their Haunted colorway. And this is probably about 200 yards. I forgot to actually measure it before I put it in the skein. I know how many wraps it is, so I just have to like measure the loop, but it's about 200 plus yards. And this is just like, again, it had lots of soft grays, and just a tiny bit of gold and green, and just a smooch of like a purpley gray to kind of give it a little bit more of like a ghosty, haunted-y vibe. So yeah, I really liked working with the fiber, and it has sort of like, again, it takes color so beautifully like merino does. Like I was in the booth for Honey Gold Acres, and she doesn't just do the sparkle. She has lots of other things as well. And I was very tempted by several of her combed tops. And the great thing is she has lots of her colorways on multiple different fibers. So she'll have them on merino, she'll have them on tarky, she'll have them on, I don't know, something else. And it was wild. Every time I would pick one up, I'd be like, ooh, and it would be merino. I'd be like, oh, but yeah, I do like this fiber. It's very enjoyable. And I've always liked rambouillet quite a bit, but so maybe it's just that little bit of extra rambouillet that helps. And again, I spun both of these quite chunky, so that probably helps as well. So that's my spinning. And then in knitting, I finished, this is the Traveler Cowl, which is a Traveler or a series of patterns by Dre Rennie Knits. And I did her shawl. I'm very tempted by that little cute cardigan with those cute pockets. But I finished my cowl. So this is a bandana cowl, which is not usually something that I like. For example, when folks wear their shawls, they look so cute, right? They put their shawl on and they have the little triangle in the front. I feel like I look like I am needing to eat ribs somewhere, or lobster or something. But so yeah, but it looks, I'm actually really pleased. Like I gotta squat to the right level here. I'm actually really pleased with it. I think it looks super cute. I guess because it's not like a symmetrical triangle that's like perfectly in the middle. It's sort of, you know, it's got a little bit. Right. So I'm very pleased with my little Halloween-y cowl. I think she turned out so good. This is also hand spun fiber. And I'm not sure who it's by. It is somebody who's no longer dying. So it's either Moon Rover, which is my first instinct, or it could be from a small dyer that I purchased some of her fiber at Yellow Springs at the wool gathering. Either way. Yeah, isn't it cute? Again, not my normal colors. And like, I spun this quite some time ago and I loved it in the skein, but I just was like not sure what I wanted to make with it. Because again, it's like, I think I had a little bit over 6 ounces, which was one of the reasons I think it's Moon Rover. I had a little bit over 6 ounces, which I was like, is that enough to do? But it worked out perfectly for this project. I probably had 5 yards left over. After I did my bind off, I was definitely sweating it. Because this is technically not one where you can just knit till you run out of yarn, because there's like a seam involved and they do need to match up. Theoretically, they need to match up. But it worked out perfectly. So yeah, I'm very pleased with it. So again, that is the Traveler Cowl by Dre Renee. And it's just some like stockinette, reverse stockinette. You get some like little fun. You could technically reverse it and just have more reverse stockinette. Whatever works for you. And then I worked on some travel projects, but didn't make huge progress on anything. But I did cast on something new. I purchased this this yarn while I was at the Wisconsin Sheep and Wool. So at Wisconsin Sheep and Wool, I purchased this yarn, I purchased the fiber, and then I purchased one of the doodle decks. So I did buy the autumn doodle deck. But those were my purchases. I feel like I need a special award for not buying a fleece, because I told myself I was not going to buy a fleece. But then I was very tempted to buy all the fleeces. Because that is the one bad thing about going to a sheep and wool, which does have a lot of sheep content, is it does get me real crazy. Like, the reason I started spinning was because of the Fleece and Fiber source book that's like all the different breeds and like learning about all of them. So that is a very like good brain scratch for me. And so it was challenging, but I didn't do it. So I need a medal. But I did buy this yarn. This is the Ridge Fingering, which is 100% fine wool, 200 yards in a 50-gram skein. And this is the colorway Radioactive. And I have cast on the Aloft shawl, which is a pattern by Becca Knits. It's available either online or as part of the 52 weeks of shawls, I want to say. And I swear I have that book, but I could not find it. I swear I have it. I could not find it. So I went ahead and bought the digital pattern. And the pattern is for a triangular shaped shawl, but I knew that I wanted, so I knew what I wanted was I wanted a shawl that had some texture. And I really felt like I wanted nups, which is so weird. Like baubles, something like. So there was a couple that were in the running, but I decided ultimately on this one because I did. But what I did decide to do is, instead of making it just a regular triangle shawl, what I'm going to do is make half of it like a regular triangle and then half of it like the double increased triangle. So in shawl shapes, you have the traditional, there's actually 3 triangle. Well, there's probably more than that. There's the one where you only increase in the middle. That one's bananas, right? Like you only increase on the spine. That one is like, I don't know, it's like an equilateral triangle or something when it comes out. But then there's the more traditional triangle, which is like increasing along the spine and at the edges every other row. So you're increasing 4 stitches every other row. And then there's the elongated triangle, which is a much shallower and longer with big tails. And that one you're increasing along the spine, but you have a double increase. So you increase along the spine every other row on both sides of the spine. Or excuse me, at the same time, you're increasing every row or twice every other row on the points. So technically every row, instead of there being 4 increases, there's 6. So what I'm trying to do is have one side the regular triangle and then the other side the elongated triangle, because one of my favorite shawls is the Stripe Study, which is done with short rows, but it has that shape, that asymmetrical shape, which I really like because it's enough that one side just sort of sits on your shoulder and then the other side can wrap, which is perfect. Like I find that to be perfect for me and how I like to wear shawls. So you have depth, but not like as much depth with like, to get a regular triangle to be wide enough, it's you have to make it very deep. So you still get the depth of the triangle, but you have more like wrapping potential. My job's real weird. That's my theory of what, like, that's theoretically what I'm doing. And you can kind of see it already. I just cast this on last night. So you can kind of see that this, right? You can kind of see that this one kind of wants to be a little bit longer. So it's not gonna be super obvious, especially at the beginning. But we'll see how she goes. And this one does have an I-cord edge, which I was a little bit like, should I turn that into a garter edge? Like, do I need more flexibility on that longer side? But then it occurred to me, like, no, it's fine actually if that I-cord edge kind of like keeps it a little bit tighter, because it'll just be curved like it wants to be wrapped, is my theory. But anyway, so there it is so far. Bam. And I am knitting that on US 2s, which is 2 sizes smaller than the pattern, which is sort of like my rule of thumb. And so in what I am reading, I've been listening to a bunch of like sort of trashy fiction. I've been listening to this series of Southern fiction, which I just don't know how I feel about. The books are all like 800 hours long. That's an exaggeration, but I kid you not, like lots of them are like 35 hours long. And I'm compelled to keep listening to them, but I am also really conflicted about listening to them and like how I feel about the author. It's like a white male author who's writing a lot about sexual assault and about race. And it's just like one of those things where you're like, I gotta like digest this for a long time to figure out how I really feel about it. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's one of those things where you're like, you're reading it, especially and you're just like, I don't know if this, I don't know. I have a lot of trouble reading male authors who talk about sexual violence perpetrated against women. It's really challenging for me. And this series has a lot of that in it. And then you also combined like the books take place in Natchez, Mississippi, so you have a combine. It's yeah. So I'm not sure. I'm still digesting. Maybe we'll talk about them. Maybe we won't. But anyway, so I've been listening to some other stuff. But I also finished Unthinkable, which is a book by Helen Thompson. Unthinkable, an extraordinary journey through the world's strangest brains. And this is the description. So our brains are far stranger than we think. We take for granted that we can remember, feel emotion, navigate, empathize, and understand the world around us. But how would our lives change if these abilities were dramatically enhanced or disappeared overnight? Helen Thompson has spent years traveling the world, tracking down incredibly rare brain disorders. In Unthinkable, she tells the stories of 9 extraordinary people she encountered along the way. From the man who thinks he's a tiger, to the doctor who feels the pain of others just by looking at them, to a woman who hears music that's not there. Their experiences illustrate how the brain can shape our lives in unexpected ways. Shape our lives in unexpected and, in some cases, brilliant and alarming ways. Story by a remarkable story, Unthinkable takes us on an unforgettable journey through the human brain. Discover how to forge memories that never disappear, how to grow an alien limb, and how to make better decisions. Learn how to hallucinate and how to make yourself happier in a split second. Find out how to avoid getting lost, how to see more of your reality, even how exactly you can confirm that you are alive. Think the unthinkable. I think the description really oversells it. So I think the immediate comparison is to Oliver Sacks, who I believe was a neuroscientist. And he wrote the book, The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat. He wrote other books as well. But similarly, like, looks at people who have these sort of like extraordinary brain experiences, like beyond synesthesia. Like, she does talk to folks who have synesthesia, but so that's the comparison. But I've never read anything by Oliver Sacks, so I can't actually make the comparison. It's just that sort of like those are out there as well if this is something you're interested in. I really enjoyed this book. The reason I say that it kind of the blurb sort of oversells it is because, like, you know, the blurb talks about like the secret to being happier. Well, secret to being happier is to like smile, because like studies show that when you smile, your brain automatically becomes happy. So I mean, a little bit of an oversell. But that said, I still did enjoy it, and I still would recommend it. I think the sort of complaints, or like the negative comparison to Oliver Sacks, is that it is a less in-depth view of these neural anomalies, I guess we could say. It's maybe like less of a scientific view, but I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. It feels very conversational. It feels like you do sort of have like a window into these people's world, and like what their daily life is like, or like how this neuroatypicalness kind of affects their day-to-day lives. And there are like these little these little sort of like tricks, or like parlor tricky kind of things about, like, you've probably seen this example of like the rubber hand example, like where you put down a blind and a rubber hand, and like you have somebody stroke your arm at the same time that they're stroking the rubber hand, and then like eventually they can just stroke the rubber hand and you will feel it. Like those, so it's like a kind of like those little like parlory tricky things. There's several of those in there. In fact, there may be like one per chapter, one per story, I'm not sure. And there were interesting things about well, the thing that I sort of like remembered the most, because it applies to me, is that she was talking about introverts and how there are sort of like, I don't know that it's universal. I don't know what the study is. So that just shows you something right now that I don't know what the study is, but that introversion is linked to people being a lot more, or linked to people who are more affected by stimulus, who are more strongly affected by stimulus. So, for example, people who are introverted often actually require more sedation because they are just more, which also sort of makes sense with like anxiety and sort of like startle reflexes and things like that. But anyway, I did find it interesting. And it is true that like looking at people's brains that sort of like operate outside of like that bell curve, I think does teach us a lot about how our brains work, and how like a better understanding of other people that maybe we don't have as intimate a view of how their brain works. For example, like people who have synesthesia often don't realize they have synesthesia until much later in their lives, because it's really hard to understand how your brain works compared to like how your neighbor's brain works, because that's not something we even have language for a lot. Like, but it's pretty fascinating. Excuse me. That said, I didn't find like a lot of like, oh, I tie this to that. And like, I didn't have like one of those like sort of like domino brain effects where like I felt like I was tying lots of things together that were outside the text. But that's no fault of the author. It's just where I was maybe when I was reading it, or like how much I know about brain stuff, which is not a lot. So yeah, I found it interesting. I would recommend it. And I would definitely consider listening to it again later on, just because, yeah, sometimes when I'm listening to books, I'm not like in the most, like I'm listening to books while I'm doing other things. And so I think this one, while this was not one where I was like, oh yes, I must get this in paperback because I need to have annotation and I need to remember this and I need to remember that. I still think I maybe would listen to it again. Again, that's called Unthinkable, and it is by Helen Thompson, and I believe narrated by the author. Yes, narrated by the author, and she was an enjoyable narrator as well. So that's it for the beginning part of September. Again, update September 15th. If you don't get there right away, keep check in later on in the weekend or later on in the week, because there's still Halloween bags that are available now. So there will probably be bags there if you are interested. And yeah, I hope you get to go appling if that's your jam. I was so tempted. So one of my like big is Weston's Antique Orchard, I want to say. And I believe it's on the north side of Milwaukee. So it was like an hour plus, just a little bit more than an hour from where I was. But they had very narrow hours because I think they do mostly like a Saturday and a Sunday. And it was like definitely not on the way for me to go home. And I did know I had a long drive that was maybe not the most exciting drive. So I was like, oh, that'll really add like another 2 hours to that 5 hour drive, which starts to become like a little bit unreasonable. They do have so many fun varieties. So if you're there, if you're in Milwaukee, there's several farmers markets. They have a Facebook page, and I hope you can get some of their Bizarro, and I say that in the best of ways, apple varieties, because they're very exciting. I would love to know if you have a new variety that you're excited about, or an old one that you rediscovered, or just like all the things. Tell me about your orcharding experiences. I would love to know. Okay, and I will talk to you next time. Bye.